Hey y'all, let's go ahead and get started with Plaguefall. I've got my my audio set up, hopefully making it not sound like I live in a tin can anymore. Got the foam on the walls, got the carpet on the floor. Hopefully things are going a lot better now. So hopefully, yeah, let's go ahead and time us a Plaguefall. We will see the introduction of my rare and elusive shaman. The only key I haven't had a 15 recorded on is my priest. I've done all my other healers so that we can see a mix of what things look like in these videos. And the priest, there's nothing wrong with them. Mine's not geared enough for 15s because I was busy with all these other healers. Anyways, Plaguefall, we'll go ahead and get started. I forget what week this was recorded on. We'll see once the key starts. I am a Venthyr, so I'm not going to be our Necrolord here, but I will point out what Necrolords can do. First off, I want to note that there is a strategy for this dungeon, which I think that we try, if I recall. Oh yeah, I remember exactly how this one starts. So we try to do something that is very valid. It is a valid strategy in which you basically if you have a rogue, you might shroud it, but we all just try to use our invisibility potions. We've already talked about it beforehand. So the plan is theoretically to use our invisibility potions to get all the way into the slime room. This skips all of the mushroom trash at the beginning, gets hero on cooldown nice and fast, and just allows you to set up some pridefuls in a pretty great way. However, fun fact for you Death Knights out there, don't Army of the Dead at the beginning of the key if you're going to do that, because your pets will pull trash because they don't get invised with you. So you'll see that that's what happens here. So even though it wasn't our plan, you are still going to have the joys of seeing what the mushroom trash is like. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm making sure I have a health potion, and why does my freaking VLC keep unmuting itself? There we go. All right. Now, theoretically, we're going to, so this was the inspiring, fortified, storming week. So we try to invis here, even though they're inspired and stuff, they can't see invis, so this should work. However, the Death Knight cast Army. I didn't notice that he did, so I don't understand what happened here, but I see stuff get pulled, and you can see me starting to freak out. This is the worst thing, in my opinion, is when someone, as a healer, when someone screws up an invis or a stealth, ideally, you end up in this obnoxious situation when it's like, well, if I pop out of stealth, maybe I can save them. But if I don't pop out of stealth, maybe I can stay out of combat and res them at the end. So if you're on Discord with your group, and particularly, I would say this is probably the tank's job, or, whoever's going to be your team captain, if you will. Often that falls to the tank, but not always. Be decisive, make a plan. The worst thing when a stealth gets screwed up is half the group not knowing what's happening. And some people are not helping. Some people are saying, why isn't that guy helping? I'm dying here. And it just gets really, really obnoxious. So that's why I I don't pop out, and that's why I'm kind of going off to the sides in weird directions. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? But I get through. Unfortunately, someone else did, whoever pulled really just didn't die. So we have to deal with all of this while also dealing with the slimes. Actually, did they pull slimes? No, they didn't. Hooray. So we're just going to kill what came through, which luckily is only one pack, so you'll actually get to see what we're fighting. So I'm going to reverse it a little bit just so that I can point out, the different casts that these do. Obviously, you're seeing them from a different... So that's just what happened there. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, and I'll explain the pulls here as you would normally do them. So... this guy actually will cast even when you're not even when you're not in combat with him. See, he casts this fungus storm thing. He's casted up. No, I don't think he has a cast up. He just starts doing it. And you want to stun him as soon as that goes out, especially on fortified weeks. Now, granted, since he's inspired, you wouldn't be able to do that. But generally speaking, you want to have a stun for every fungus storm because there's just a whole lot of ticking AoE damage. So having someone call the stuns on the fungus storm's a big deal. You can't kick it, but you can use, paralysis, hodge, leg sweep, etc. if it's not inspired, obviously. Fungal Mincer will cast something called Wonder Grow, which puts a magic buff on everything around them. Mages can spell steal it. I think it's a big haste buff. If there's no mage in your group, just use a mass dispel or a blood elf racial to get rid of it if it goes off. However, it is kickable. So like if you have a mage in your group, talk to them. Say, do you want me to kick that or not? Because they might say, no, I don't kick it so I can spell steal it. Or they might just say, go ahead and kick it, because while the mage will only spell steal one, but it goes on everything in the poll, so that can be dangerous. So communicate whether or not you want that to happen. Generally speaking, if you're unsure, just kick it. Like half the time mages don't even spell steal it anyway, unfortunately. Mages, get that extra deeps, come on y'all. They also do something called gripping infection, I think it's called. Healers is just a magic debuff that you can cleanse off people. You can also freedom it, gnome racial it, tiger's lust it, things of that nature. It's just a snare, which is actually not generally too big of a deal here. There's not really a whole lot of stuff to stay out of except a big growing mushroom, which I think comes from the fungal menser as well, which is just a big growing green mushroom. Get out of it. It's as simple as that. And then also, if you're not invising, and we don't end up with this guy because we're invising, but you can barely see here on the side, you can see a shadow of a big lumbering giant. Typically, pulls will happen that they pull that into this. Now, granted, since it's inspired, we probably wouldn't have done that even if we were pulling this. But the big guy, he just puts green shit on the floor. Just don't stand in it. And also, he has a cast that summons ads called, I think, Creepy Crawlies or something like that. Just kick that, so you don't have to deal with ads that are unnecessary. So, but you'll see here, it's basically the same mob types every time. Oh, the Harvester, that's the one that summons the big mushroom. So it wasn't even in the first pull, it's only the Harvester that summons the big mushroom. But, the Stormer, every single pack you would fight here has a Stormer in it. So, like, as you're heading into them, be like, oh, I've got the first stun on this Stormer, or who's got a stun for this Stormer, things like that. I don't know why my VLC isn't playing. There we go. So typically you'll do 2 or 3 pulls here. This pull right here to the right is the largest pull you might do. Most people will skip that. However, a lot of people get a little bit nervous about going into this center area because there's a sleeping plague rock here. Just don't get up on the island. The island is not a safe place. Just don't go up there. So, but you can, if you go directly in the middle, you'll see you can easily get through this pathway without pulling the stuff on the right. So, of course, we end up with a little bit of mess because of our failed skip. So, and that's why I'm like freaking out off kind of by myself. I'm like, should I stay out of combat? What's happening? But our priest has died. Everyone else is just going to handle killing everything. And then I think I have to res him because obviously he can't come through now because of so there's that fungus storm. You can see how much damage it's doing on fortified. So it would have been nice to have a stun there. We didn't have it, so I just have to heal through it. And that is basically all we do here. So there's the binding fungus that got kicked. Okay, so we accidentally, this isn't great. We pull this Plague Belcher, which is the next mob type here. There's one padding on each side of this room, so there's 2 total. He will do something called Plague Belch. Surprise, the Plague Belcher Plague Belches, which is like a frontal cone that you just need to get out of. He kind of rears back and then belches in front of him. So don't be in front of him when he does that. And then he will also summon little slimes. And if those slimes get to him, he eats them and he gets bigger and does more damage. So you want to keep him away from the slimes. Tanks, this might mean kiting him away on fortified. And then also if you're someone who has a lot of stuff to stop the slimes, so that would be stuns, ring of peace, slows, frost novas, things of that nature. Then that's a great thing to just like pop that down to keep the slimes from getting to him so your tank doesn't have to kite as much. And so we have a lot of, like I between myself and like one of the demon hunters, we've got a lot of stuff to stop those. So I'm not too worried about these particular mobs. But so he beckoned slime. So we're going to start seeing some slimes come from probably this direction, I think. Yep, there we go. So you can see that morsel just spawned. And here they come. So that's the thing that we want to keep coming. You can see the tank demon hunter put down one of those little like kind of fear circles. I don't know what the different sigils are called, but that's to stop those from coming in. But he did eat one. That's why he has some stacks there. He actually might have eaten 2. I forget if he starts with 1 stack or not. There's that Belch Plague, so you can see that big frontal cone there. And then we've got more morsels coming in. So we got Sigil of Chains from the Demon Hunter. I should cap totem that, but I didn't. I was trying to, did I battle res that priest? If I did, good job me. I'm not sure. but we've got him up. But you can see this guy, he's already fortified and he has 6 stacks. So it's becoming very important to not stand in front of him because it's going to chunk you real bad, possibly one-shot you if it does. So I'm slowing down the morsels, putting out a cap totem to keep them from coming in. And there we go. We have recovered. Good job, team. Okay, these slimes. These slimes actually can do quite a bit of damage on fortified, and they also do on-death affixes. The reason they do a lot of damage is not only just because there's a lot of them, but also they do like proc nature damage. So you want to make sure to don't think, oh, it's just a tiny little room of tiny things. Healers, be ready, because this can go pretty bad pretty quick, especially on non-inspiring weeks when people are more likely to pull the entire room. The damage will surprise you at times. You can also see that they have a little magic debuff. What that means is when they die, they're going to drop a puddle, and that puddle does quite a bit of damage on fortified, but since it's a magic debuff, you can either blood elf it, or you can mass dispel from a priest. Obviously, with so many, it's not usually worth it to purge it off single target, but a mass dispel or a blood elf can take care of that pretty well. I actually do it even if I don't give a damn about the puddles that they drop, because it all of the puddles are a different graphic instance, and it can lag people's computers out pretty bad in here if they all die at the same time. So I do it just for safety's sake for that reason. As you can see, we've got some inspired. Because they can do so much damage, especially on fortified, this is usually pulled in little groups on inspired week, and possibly even other fortified weeks like necrotic and things like that, just to make it a little bit safer. But also don't be surprised if you see the whole room pulled, because you can see they only have, even on a 15, they only have 80,000 health, so they will die pretty quick. And let's go ahead and just see what that looks like. I forget if we have a Necrolord or not. I think our Death Knight's a Necrolord. I think I saw him doing that. So here we go. You can see how much the tank's suddenly getting, that's not even the tank. The Demon Hunter pulled threat. And that's also a really common thing here because of target cap and, the tank trying to round stuff up. If you don't have misdirects and tricks, and even sometimes when you do, you'll see some threat pulls here simply because there's so many mobs that the tank's trying to round up at once. So that's the other reason the damage may surprise you. So you can see we did have some stuff cleansed, I think, but you can see that puddle just growing out of there. It gets pretty intense. Looks like our Necrolord did not. I don't think that he sucked those up. So the slimes are the Necrolord ability in this dungeon. When a slime dies and its body is left there, if you fleshcraft, or I think they've redesigned how fleshcraft works for these. I think it's if fleshcraft is up or if it's on cooldown, you will absorb the body of it. And in which case here, you will give a buff to anyone within 10 yards of you. So especially ranged, this is something everyone should know. You need to be within 10 yards of your Necrolord to get the Necrolord buff. So if your Necrolord is ranged, you need to be melee adjacent. You ranged Necrolords you, because melee can't come out and stand on you just to get your buff. You need to be within 10 yards of melee. If you're melee, if your Necrolord is melee ranged, you need to come in for that purpose as well. Basically, don't be more than 10 yards away from each other in this dungeon if you have Necrolords. So you can see we skipped the boss. Or did we? Yeah, we did. We've skipped it. So this is kind of a common thing for a lot of different reasons. There's really... I forget why we skip this before the boss on this week, but it is, don't be surprised if you see people starting to skip the boss. Don't worry, you won't forget about it. But what happens is there's these 2 plague borers here, right? He's gone up and CC'd one of them. You can use a paralysis, you can use imprison. I'm pretty sure that mages can sheep them, hunters can frost trap them. These plague borers, either when they reach a certain percentage of health, it's pretty low, I think it's 50% or lower, or after a certain amount of time in combat, they just explode. I think that these ones will explode after a certain amount of time in combat. That might be further up. Either way, there's a lot of stuff in here that explodes, is the point being. And so what you do is you CC one of these. So he CC'd the one, and then he's going to pull the other one up into this group, because anything that explodes not only on us, but also on the mobs nearby. So the great thing about about Plaguefall, especially on fortified weeks, is a huge amount of damage just comes from the environment and the mobs themselves. So even if your DPS is kind of low, the dungeon will make up for it. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. He's still got the 1 CC'd back there. He's pulling it. He's getting a little bit low, so it's ready to explode. and now he goes into this area. So these slime claws, they don't really do much. They will jump around a little bit, I think, I forget. Either way, don't be too far away from the barrels. And then he will eventually get this spine breaker, and the spine breaker is this big lumbering dude. He's just been pulled in. Corroded claws, that's the thing. It's a disease. If you have a disease cleanse and maybe you're running with a resto shaman who doesn't have a disease cleanse, consider on like big weeks cleansing your tank every now and then, because the diseases can become pretty unruly in fortified keys. But it's not the worst thing in the world if you can't cleanse it. So, but that's what the corroded claws does, is it puts up disease. Whew! I think that we've probably had a frontal cone go off. So the big spine breaker that patted in, he basically does two things. Well, three technically. One's on death though. He will, also before I forget about on deaths, I also have to mention that all that big slime room with all those little slimes, they do on death affixes. So on bursting weeks, that is a huge thing to consider. Bolstering weeks, you don't want to keep one too high. So just sanguine weeks, if you're fighting that with other trash on sanguine week, prepare to have something immediately healed to full, that kind of thing. So just keep in mind that those do on death affixes, which is uncommon for small mobs this tier. So anyways, back to the pull we're on now. The spine breaker has a frontal cone, so I think it's called belch or something like that. I don't know. It's just a big frontal cone. And it's big. Like, it is big. So don't think just because you're not in melee, it's not going to hit you. Even ranged, keep an eye out. Make sure you're not in front of him. The other thing he does is, I think it's called spine breaker, spines or something like that. A few brown circles will appear underneath people's feet. Just move out of them, because after a few seconds, it's going to do damage. It's kind of like the gargoyle spikes in sanguine depths. So move out of brown circles, and then when it dies, it will burst into 5. That's what this little debuff is indicating here. It will burst into 5 little slimes, and I'm going to talk about what to do about those little slimes when this dies. Jagged spines, that's the thing. So there's those circles to get out of, because as you can see, those spikes came out. And look at how much damage. Things are just getting destroyed here because of the barrel. There's also a barrel here. I don't know if you noticed it, but that's the reason we fight them here, is because the barrels around the area will also explode and do damage. And once again, they will explode on you if you are standing in that big green circle. It is a huge damage burst and also a very huge damage disease. So you need to get out of it. If someone doesn't get out of it and you have a disease cleanse, whether you're the healer, the tank, or the DPS, cleanse anyone with that disease, because otherwise they will probably die. So the spine breaker has died, and you can see all around him these little green circles are appearing. These are about to be tiny little baby slimes. There they are. And you can see they're casting Metamorphosis. This is kind of a dangerous little cast. Basically, if the cast goes off, they will turn into a more substantial slime and you have to kill it. There are a few different ways to deal with this. So you can run over them, just by squishing them, but you can see that does quite a bit of damage. On fortified weeks, for 15 and higher, you should probably, especially if you're going to pop more than one, or if it's about to spawn on top of you. I don't know why this thing's telling me Infectious Rain's about to be cast. Weird. Anyways, so you want to be sure that these things get popped, but it does a lot of damage. So pop a defensive if you're going to go over one of them. It doesn't do a disease or anything. It just does an initial burst of damage. The other thing you can do is kill them. They only have 13,000 health, so a big AoE like burst real quick should handle them, but usually it's easier to just pop a defensive and squish them. And then the other thing, which is really only going to be possible if you have a coordinated group, otherwise people are just going to pop them anyway, is once they're stopped casting Metamorphosis, they won't start again. And they also don't aggro on people. So if you can stop them casting Metamorphosis, such as with a leg sweep or a Chaos Nova or any sort of hard stun like that, they will just eventually disappear. It takes them a while to disappear, but they do eventually just disappear. So if you coordinate stuns right as these things come up, you can ignore them entirely. However, on a 15, walking over them shouldn't one-shot people, especially with a defensive up. So it's usually easier to just squish them. That's kind of more something to consider if you're somehow pushing into really, really high keys and literally it will kill you to try to squish over them and it takes too long to kill them. That's when you might want to start looking at that. I don't know why my DBM is telling me Infectious Rain's going to happen. Anyways, so we've still got this Plague Borer CC'd here. So since we've got to deal with him anyway before we go do the boss, we're going to take him into, what are we taking him into? That pack, I think? I can't imagine any other reason we'd be over here. Oh, a Plague Rock. Remember, of course, we had our invisibility screw up, so I think that this tank is just trying to make it work and figure out what percentage he needs, because, of course, we still want that Prideful for the boss. So that's probably what he's doing here, is how do I get this Prideful spawned properly, because this is not a particularly common way to pull this area. I mean, he's making really great use of the Plague Borers, so that's good. I don't know if we expected to get these viral globs here, but we did, and it is what it is. That Plague Borer is now exploding, so that's going to handle both of these things really well. That Wing Buffet, if a Plague Rock gets pulled, which is not common in most routes, but if one does get pulled, it just stacks this disease on the tank that lowers their max health. And then it also will cast Wing Buffet, which is a frontal line attack, so don't be in front of it when it Wing Buffets. Like, tanks pointed away, everyone else make sure you know what direction it's pointing. So, and then we've got a Plague Binder, which just will, that's what does the gripping infection here, that will snare people in a, like, and if you, as you can probably imagine, if it gets snared in a Plague Borer, they're going to die. So you want to make sure that you don't have that go off, or if it does go off, you cleanse them really quick, or like remove their snare. And the slime is casting viral globs, which is making, which is just doing AoE damage. Viral globs is normally interruptible, but it's not right now because of the inspired mob, but typically you can kick that if you want. Nothing that the Plague Rock does is interruptible, and it's also not stunnable, so you just have to kill those, sadly. Now that the inspired's dead, we've got people interrupting the viral globs here. And we're about to get Prideful. This is actually a really good setup for a Prideful, because we're about to kill this slime. So, and this is why that's good. Yep, and so we've got our Necrolord flesh crafting on it. So this this puddle that this guy leaves behind, if you stand in the puddle, it does damage, but it's also like a 15% haste increase, so a huge deal. But the good thing is, if you have a Necrolord who flesh crafts, that they then get that 10-yard aura I was talking about. That's a 15% haste increase, I think, for anyone within 10, and it's 2 minutes. It's like 2 minutes of like little hero just for killing this red slime. I think I saw that they stacked, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't trust me on that. Either way, it's fortified, so I'd prefer people not stand in the red stuff anyway. So we're going to fight Pride here. Enjoying our... You can tell if people have the buff or not. You can see we're all kind of bleeding. You can see like blood coming off of all of our tunes. Even here, you can see the priest is kind of... Ooh, nope, not anymore. See, he's too far away from the Death Knight, who is our... Oh, and then he comes in, and now you can see he's got this red effect around him. So that's showing that he's close enough to get the haste buff. That's a way to quickly tell if you have the haste buff or not. Or you can just look at your icons. Let's see, once I get a little bit closer to the Death Knight, you'll see it. Is that... Yeah, so that's it from... This is the buff that I get for... If he looks on him, he'll have a little red skull. And that's the haste buff. So now we come in to this boss with heroism and a haste buff and Prideful, and it's not tyrannical. This guy's gonna get destroyed. So Globgrog has some... It's a fairly simple boss. Tanks start him out kind of right around here. Don't move him to the center, please. Moving him to the center is very annoying. So actually, I'll just fight it. I'll just tell you about each one of these as they happen. So he's going to do a special ability, and it will either be a Plague Stomp or a slime, a Beckon Slime. So he's going to Plague Stomp. So, or a Slime Wave as well he can do. Beckon Slime separates. Plague Stomp or Slime Wave are his specials, and then Beckon Slime always happens at a specific time. So Plague Stomp is going to knock every single person away from him. It's going to give them a disease, and that disease does damage and snares them. So keep in mind that you're about to get knocked back, diseased, and snared. So the reason they have to worry about whether or not getting knocked back is because you'll see, I think I'm about to get knocked into the goo, which does damage. It doesn't do a whole bunch of damage. I'm rarely worried about that, but if you're low on health or your healer's struggling, obviously it's best to not get knocked into the slime that does damage. Much more important, though, is to not be standing here, kind of where the Demon Hunter is, because if he gets knocked back, he goes in this direction, which is fine now, but keep in mind we have this mob padding back here. If you haven't killed this other plague belcher, it is highly likely that someone's going to get their butt knocked into it by this plague stomp. So if you haven't killed it, keep in mind where that is and position for your plague stomps properly, because you're about to see we're all getting knocked back. See, it's a pretty serious knockback, and now we've all got this this snare, and you more than likely want to move in as quickly as possible. You see other people kind of moving towards him, and here's why. Here comes the slime wave. He's going to point in a direction and do a frontal cone that does a lot of damage, and which is just generally bad. But remember, we're all snared because of that disease. So if you're worried about people not being able to get out of it, cleanse the people you're worried about. That's usually going to be the ranged or just people who are really slow. Because remember, they all just got knocked back. So even melee might not be quickly in melee. Revival from monks will remove all the disease quickly. That's pretty nice. Tiger's Lust, snares, or Tiger's Lust, freedoms, gnome racial. Got to talk about my gnome racial, y'all. And that way you can help people get out of the slime wave. But that's why everyone moves more into melee, because it's much easier to just move through the boss and be on the other side of him. Rather than if you were for some reason out here, I don't know why you would be, but let's pretend you were out here, you'd have to go all the way in this direction. So that's why you want to be close to him. Not to mention we're getting our delicious haste buff from our Death Knight by being close to him. So here's Beckon Slime. Unfortunately, we kill him so fast you aren't really going to be able to see it. But I'll explain the way that this mechanic works. So he's going to summon, I believe, technically 4 slimes. One is a big slime. Most people just call it big slimes. It's called a smorgasbord. It's a smorgasbord. It is, which means sandwich table. Fun fact. And it can be CC'd by paralysis, frost traps, blinds from rogues. Paladins can fear it. And warlocks can banish it, I believe. So, druids can do roots on it, things of that nature. So that is just usually CC'd off by itself, because if he eats it, I've never seen one be eaten before. Like, that's how easy it is to CC and just deal with like that. But I'm pretty sure he gets a big old heal and damage buff or something like that. And then the little ones are usually, so he'll summon that from an area close to him. So it's either going to be on this one, it would be right here or right here. I forget which based on where we're at. And then the other slimes come from far away. So they're going to come from the opposite end. I highly doubt we'll even visually see them. But they're 3 little slimes, and they start moving as quickly as they can towards the boss. If he eats them, just like the Plague Belchers, he gets a heal and he does more damage. So again, just like the Plague Belchers, if we were going to have to deal with one of those, I'd put out an Earthbind Totem, Cap Totem, anything to slow them down and stun them while we deal with the boss. Depending on the week, if it's tyrannical and what your DPS is like, you might need to peel and kill slimes. Also, depending on group comp, it's usually better to just, use mass entangle, rings, things to keep them away from the boss. But depending on your DPS, you might need to kill them just for safety's sake. But unfortunately, we don't get to see the mechanics because we're just too good. We really did stack that with heroism, pride, and the haste buff. So back into the area we were. So we've got plague borers in this pack and a canister available. Other than that, there's really not much to mention about this thing. So they're just doing phlegms. We're stunning them just to lower the amount of damage going out. And since we're going to have the plague borer and the barrel exploding, we want to get as much value out of that as possible, so that's why we're pulling all of this crap in here. But this is about to get, as you can see, very dangerous. So people are moving out, and because you want to make sure everything stays in the circles that are about to explode, we've got a really good use of Chaos Nova here. Big stuns or slows to make sure stuff, or a sigil of chains or something like that, is a really good option here to make sure that things stay in the explodey zone, the kill zone, if you will. Because you don't want them following a tank out and missing getting exploded upon. Corrosive Gunk is low-key dangerous on fortified weeks because it's going to hit everyone who's standing in melee, I think, if I recall correctly. I just know that it stacks up really fast. It's a disease that so not all healers can cleanse it, and it does a lot of damage. So if you can interrupt that, it's usually a good idea. The thing I'm asking is, are we doing another invis and back pulling the borers or no? That's because it is very common here. In the next area, which we will see, there's constantly spawning plague borers. So it's relatively common for groups to skip this really painful pack here. They will kill it, but they skip to the other side of it. And then they go and pull plague borers, get them low, and then pull them into this pack in order to cause them to explode on this pack and kill it. You'll be much more likely to do that with a rogue because obviously the invis isn't costing you anything at that point, but I don't believe we do that. Yeah, we're gonna, because of our weird percentage issue that we've had, we're going to use this barrel here to get some value on these slimes. Makes total sense. And then that, so you can see, look at these are just from that corrosive gunk that those things are casting. 3 stacks, 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 1 stack. So it stacks up really fast, and it actually, I'm obviously healing through it just fine, but it can get pretty dicey if stacks get high. So we've killed those. We're essentially refreshing our slime buffs, which is great. And then we're going to, so this one's our first purple slime, I believe. Purple slime makes everything around it take like 80% reduced damage or something. It's ridiculous. So when there's a purple slime in the pack, purple slime is always your primary target. Even though normally you'd want to kill the inspired mob first, purple slime is just the damage reduction is just so huge. It's inefficient to kill anything else. Okay, here is one of my biggest issues with Plaguefall. You can see this guy very helpfully saying Withering Filth on himself. This is a big deal. You can see this you could see a purple arrow over his head and then a purple circle, and then he is being targeted by this thing called Withering Filth. When that hits him, it's going to do a lot of damage, and anyone in that circle is also going to take that damage, and it gets a huge haste debuff. So it's like 50%, and healers can only heal cleanse one person at a time. It's a magic debuff, so other people, I guess we have a priest. The priest could theoretically mass dispel if it goes off, but it's a big amount of damage and a 50% haste reduction. So you want to make sure that doesn't go on people. However, for whatever reason, like DBM and other like boss mods don't alert about that. So actually, I hadn't even noticed that this guy has this weak aura. I'm going to go find that weak aura, and if not, I'm going to make one myself because that's like freaking value right there. Because there you'll see, I don't know if we do it on this route, but in the back end, there's a little hallway where you might easily spread that to your whole group and it gets real bad. So you can see there's that haste debuff though, because he can't avoid it. Like, it's going to go on him no matter what. So I'm going to cleanse him here in a minute, I'm sure. Maybe I'm just going to make him suffer. Apparently I am. He has that nice helpful weak aura and he did a good job, and there we go, I cleansed him that time. I was gonna say I'm making him suffer anyways. So now we've got, since that's the purple slime is another slime that the necrolords can suck up with their slime sucker. So now we have I think it's like a 10 or 15% damage taken reduction, which is great for this. The mob types are no different than what we've already fought. However, this is a pretty dangerous pull because we've got Spinebreaker that's going to do that big, painful frontal cone. You can see it happening right here. It might hit this priest, actually. Let's find out. Nope, it didn't. Hooray. Then we've got Jagged Spines. All of this while also, thankfully, man, this Demon Hunter, I'm liking him a lot. Anyways, he kicked the Gripping Infection. If he hadn't, someone's about to get snared right as Jagged Spines is going off. So that's why that gets so dangerous. Oop, I got hit by it. Sorry, guys. I let you all down. So this isn't that big of a deal of a pack as long as you watch the frontal cones, stay out of the circles, and kick the snares or cleanse them if they go off. But either way, it's just a big pull. And then again, we've got these metamorphoses going off. I've already explained, just, you can see most people are just popping a cooldown and going over them. Oh, also notable is the other reason that pull can go bad real fast is the slime claws. They will run when they get low. You can see a rotting slime claw attempts to run away in fear down here. And what that's going to do, if you're very unlucky, is it's going to pull stuff that you didn't already pull. We'd already cleared out a lot of the area, so it wasn't a big risk for us. But if you're not watching those runners, they can very easily run backwards and pull stuff that you did not intend to pull. So keep that in mind and plan accordingly. So now we're moving into the tentacle area. So you're going to kill the first tentacle here on the right. So the tentacles are kind of an interesting thing. First off, if no one's in melee, they're going to spam vile spit at someone, which needs to be kicked. And obviously, if they're not, if they're doing that, that means no one's in melee, so it needs to be a ranged kick. Ideally, that's never going to happen. Point being, tanks, you need to be up in that business, which can be difficult because, as you can see, we've got plague borers running up to us, and then also canisters to stay out of. So the goal here is to try to make sure that the tentacle dies. Plague borers, if they're exploding, explode on tentacles, so you get value out of that. And to not stand in any explosions. Making this more difficult is the fact that the tentacles will occasionally, and especially, it seems to always be when they get low. I'm not sure if it's percentage based or if that just happens to work out timing wise. But yep, there it goes. It just started casting something called Crushing Embrace. That's not kickable, but it is stunnable. And what that does is it will pick someone up and just kind of hold them there. They're not stunned. They can still attack and heal and all that jazz. However, they have to stay, you know, they're stuck in that tentacle's body, like as far as a location base. So if something explodes, such as a plague borer or a barrel, they're going to die basically. So the best thing to do is what this demon hunter's done is just when they start getting low, just stun them until they're dead. And that way you won't have anyone accidentally get picked up at like the worst possible time. We're going to get a pride. I think this goes a little south. I forget why or how, but maybe people don't notice the plague borer. I don't really recall, but we do, as you can see, try to get this plague borer to explode on the pride. It is possible, but with all the movement that's happening, it gets a little bit dicey. We'll be able to res that guy though, no problem. If you have to do a res here, everyone else should back up because plague borers will, if you go like up into this area, plague borers will get pulled and you'll have to, you'll keep getting your healer in combat. So make sure that everyone backs up if you should have to res. We've got the prideful buff and we can also grab the plague borers. So it looks like we're going to get a little bit of extra percent here by going back and grabbing some stuff and using the prideful buff on it, which is a good value. We'll get all these slime claws going and then we're going to grab a plague borer. So this is really quite common just to get some percentage from these plague borers. And they're just they will continuously spawn until this mob off here in the distance dies. So you can just use them to kill basically whatever you want as long as you can bring them to the plague borers so the plague borers stay in. There's that exploding barrel. So we want to make sure that we aren't in that. Unfortunately, I moved towards the next tentacle. I didn't realize we weren't about to. So I think we're going to get, okay, so we only got the one tentacle. So this tentacle is usually pulled, so this isn't the biggest of deals, but I did need to immediately turn to it and make sure I'm ready to kick it, because with no one in melee, it might start casting. The reason that I was like, oh no, did we get two tentacles, is because there's another tentacle back here behind this canister that is not regularly pulled. So avoid going back by this canister, because otherwise you'll pull a tentacle that you don't want to pull. So I'd immediately stunned that tentacle to give the tank time to pick it up, and he did so. We'll get these plague borers going on it. So there's that Crushing Embrace. Unfortunately, now I don't have a stun. So you can see the Death Knight is stuck in it, which nothing's about to explode. So it's not the biggest of risk. But either way, the Demon Hunter stunned it, which is great. Here comes the explosion to finish off that tentacle. And we move up. So this guy, he just does a big circle around him, which causes an explosion of disease. So stay out of the circle and then don't stand in the green stuff that's left behind here, obviously. And he'll cast Pestilence Bolt. So the other thing to know about this and some strategies is, like I said, until he's dead, those plague borers will continue to spawn. It is not at all uncommon to see people go into the next area, grab a bunch of trash, and bring it up to this area in order to use plague borers to kill the rest of the trash. I don't remember if we even bother trying, but it is totally viable. But you do need to plan for it because the plague borers will explode after a while, so you need to get stuff in position fast enough. Obviously, we did not do it, so we'll just move on, and I will pause for a moment to take a drink. I'm really worried about this audio recording since this is the first one with the new setup. Hopefully it sounds okay. So this boss, which you can see off here in the distance, he eventually will start jumping from platform to platform, but he doesn't start until one of the platforms has been cleared. So you typically will start with the left platform. This is usually the one that people will try to bring into the plague borers if they can. It's a relatively simple platform, just 2 Plague Binders and a Slime Claw. Because there's 2 casters, it's kind of difficult to bring them up to the Plague Borer area. So you want like someone who has maybe some ranged kicks to help you out with that. And then just the Slime Claw, which we've been fighting plenty of. Just kill those nice and easy. And as soon as these start dying, that boss will be able to jump from platform to platform to platform. This one is a common place to get a weird Prideful on. Typically, you'll get Prideful after depending on the route, of course, possibly on the next platform. Okay, so this platform will typically, so now this guy can start jumping. So we need to now worry about whether or not we're standing in a place he would jump to so that we don't accidentally pull the boss. So what people will do is they'll pull this, but then they'll bring it around the side of the mushroom. So yeah, which is a little bit harder with Inspired, but we do manage to make it work. The reason that it's hard with Inspired is because there's again a caster here, so you want to make sure you have a ranged interrupt ready to get him around here. This mushroom is not a line of sight point. They can cast directly through it. You can see here we've got another Withering Filth. That's that big purple circle. Since we have the purple slime, we have the purple circle. You have to make sure that you don't have anyone else in your circle. So you can see now both of them took that, both the tank and the Death Knight, because they were both within the circle. And in the meantime, I've got someone who's stuck in a gripping infection. So there's 3 different magic debuffs to cleanse here. It'd be nice if the priest mass dispels, but I don't think he's going to, and that's expected. That's not this isn't a normal situation for him to have to worry about. Then we've got the viral globs, which is the red slime. So that's just something that once we can kick, it would be nice to do so, but isn't a big deal. But because you can see it's taking everyone down by like 5% health every time it goes off. But other than that, it's not the worst in the world. And then the Plague Binder is, of course, don't get people snared. And that is, so since we have both a purple and a red slime, this is going to be a good yep, there he goes, flesh crafting. So really big Necrolord value right here. That place where we, right where we just were is a very typical Pride location. If that does spawn a Pride, keep in mind that you can't really spread out. So you need to be very on top of seeing where the lines are so you don't get hit by other people's Prides. And then, so we've got another Spine Breaker. He's going to belch pretty quickly after he's pulled, so watch his frontal cone, especially because some tanks will just pull him back, some will try and pull him up the stairs. So you have to, see what your tank is doing and adjust accordingly so you're not in that frontal cone, and then get out of the jagged spikes. And that's basically it here. I've seen a lot of frontal cone deaths on this particular pull, so keep an eye out. Don't stand in the cone. And then it's also pretty common for people to forget that this guy explodes into the little oozes and people just run off to start the boss. Don't forget about the oozes. They are dangerous. And of course, we're definitely not forgetting about the oozes because we have Prideful first, which is once again not where I usually fight the Prideful, but this is better, so that's fine. We've got big Necrolord value. I'm not moving, baddie. Oh, nope, I didn't get hit. Hooray, maybe I knew the whole time I was fine. All right, so this guy, his first platform is basically a non-issue. He's going to, every once in a while, he'll slime inject the tank. It puts a little dot on the tank that can be cleansed by the healer. And once it's cleansed, that causes a tiny little slime to appear nearby that begins casting Erupt. If Erupt goes off, it does damage, so you want to kill that slime. It's only got 4k if you want to damage it, but just like the other slimes we fought, you can easily just run over it, which someone just did, and it will pop the slime. That's basically it for this whole situation. You will likely be off of this platform before any other mechanic goes off. But then after a while, he will jump to another platform. So you have to go through this damaging stuff, which is unfortunate. Warlock portals and other movement speed increase stuff's cool here. And then once he's on these other platforms, he throws a vial into here, summoning a big explodey slime, which begins casting Virulent Explosion. Especially on Tyrannical, that way if this goes off, it will basically one-shot the group. On Fortified, you might be able to survive with cooldowns, but it's better to not. So once this slime is up, generally speaking, it becomes the primary kill target. Now, when you have Prideful and Necrolord buffs on a Fortified week, that may or may not be the case. Let's see if people switch to it. Okay, they did. So good. So they've switched to the thing, and they're going to try and kill it. However, also at the same time, the boss has cast slime something. I forget what. Anyways, he summons a slime shortly after jumping. It is a purple slime on Mythic. And that purple slime, you'll recall, causes anything around it to take like 80% reduced damage. So that either needs to die or not be around things. So tanks, if it's just roaming around doing its thing, you need to take it and the boss away from that big explodey slime, because that slime cannot explode. The big explodey slime can't explode. So make sure to keep the purple slime away from it so that everyone else can kill it efficiently. Once that explodey slime is dead, then the purple slime becomes the kill target and then the boss. That said, it is very common, depending on your group comp, to try to just CC the slime and stay away from it. So this is particularly easy to do for me on a resto druid, because I can typhoon it away and then roots it. While, for example, like my paralysis from my monk, for some reason Ring doesn't push it as far. I mean, for some reason, that's because mechanically it doesn't. Mechanically, Ring doesn't push it as far, so it's a lot harder to bring in paralysis. Warlock, Banish works really well on these. Paladins can fear them, but fear breaks on damage and doesn't have a very long duration, so that's not ideal. And basically, if you can manage to push it away and keep it CC'd, then that's great, but otherwise, you want to kill it. Also keep in mind that depending on the type of CC, if it's an explosive week, it might spawn an explosive out where you're not watching for it. And if it's a tyrannical week, if it takes a long time for you to go to these other platforms and do more stuff, you might forget that it's there and drop the CC. So you want to make sure that you're on top of refreshing your CC when necessary. I'm going to reverse it a little bit because that next mechanic that we are about to see is very important to discuss, and it's one of the ones that people typically suffer at. So you can see, I'll show you this and then I'll back it up again. You can see he cast something called Slime Lunge. He jumped at someone and then these X's come off of here. So what he does when he slime lunges is he picks whoever is furthest away from him at the time that he jumps. He jumps towards them, and from that person, an X will appear. An X comes out of damaging slime. So there it is. So he's picked, I don't know, someone here, and the X is in a way that it's basically like pointed in the direction that his face was pointing when he jumped. So you can see he like jumped from here to here. So as a result, one of the lines is going out in front of him. You'll see this again. So now he's jumped from here to here. So one of the lines should be like this. Yep, there it goes. And now he's jumped from here to here. So one of the lines will come out. So the line should be like this. Yeah. So that's what you do, is you just see where he's jumping from to where he's jumping to, and just kind of move into that pie slice that should be safe there. So we've got that purple slime out here that needs to die. What do purple slimes do? They do Withering Filth. So again, it's targeted the Demon Hunter. So if people are in that circle, yep, we've got both the Demon Hunters in the circle. So that's 2 haste debuffs that I have to deal with now, and I can only do 1 at a time. So that's why you really need to keep an eye on that purple slime. And oops, I keep trying to reverse because I want to show you one more mechanic, and he keeps doing it so fast. So we just talked about purple slime, we talked about the jump, here comes the Withering Filth, and then here comes the actual mechanic I wanted to talk about. Is after these jumps, he'll typically Burning Strain. So he starts casting this very fast cast Burning Strain. If it goes off, it's a disease, it does stack, and it does do a lot of damage. So if you can cleanse a disease, that's great. If not, you just have to heal through it. The way to get him to stop doing it is to kick him. Once you interrupt one, he won't do it again for that round. But if you don't interrupt him, he'll just keep chain casting it. So you need to make sure that you have someone ready to kick him immediately. Typically, since the tank should be on him anyway, that's probably a tank job. But if he's just jumped really far, keep in mind ranged, you might want to help out with it. So there's nothing else to interrupt in this fight. So like having everyone ready to interrupt is really good. And a Pestilence Surge, that's the thing that summons the big, the purple slime. And every other platform is just the same. I just heroed to make sure that we can kill this explodey slime. We've again got the purple slime being taken away. He's jumped from here to here, so I know that actually I might be in a bad spot here. Nope, so I moved, excellent. So he jumped from here to here, bad spot, yeah. Burning Strain started, someone kicked it, so he'll stop. Exciting. And that's so I cleansed the tank, so then the tiny little slime came off that begins casting Erupt, so we have to go run over it. Slime injection, so again, I cleanse. Poor little priest is having so many issues with this. A lot of people have issues with this. In fact, I think I'm gonna go ahead and I was like pointing things out with my mouse, but let's go ahead and get our good friend MS Paint going here. So I forget where so he jumped from about here, right? I didn't quite check. And obviously he's jumping to here. So we know then that since he's jumping from approximately here to here, I might be a little bit off, but you know, approximately here to here, then theoretically, this is hard to do in like a 3D space. Theoretically, it's going to go like that, right? Let's see what happens. Yep, exactly. I'm so good at this. So now, watch me not be good at this by, as we already know, since we've seen the spoilers, he's going to jump at me and I'm going to fail. So now he's jumping from here to here, meaning that this line should then, once again, 3D space, this isn't going to be perfect, but it's going to be something like that, because remember, it's based on, so he has to turn to face me to jump, and then one of the lines is going to come out in the direction he's now facing. So theoretically, I should get over here. Okay, oh, that was the good one. Okay, so, and ta-da! I guess that wasn't the one I failed. But that's how you can tell how to get out of those lines, is just like look at the direction he's facing and know one of the lines is coming out in the direction that he's facing. And he always jumps to the furthest person away. So if you're really far away, keep in mind it's probably going to be on you. All right, tentacle area. They keep adding and removing tentacles to this dungeon. So like typically like skipping, I've seen groups go to the left, I've seen groups go to the right, I've seen groups go down the middle. Just be prepared. The mob types aren't any different based on, you just handle them in like different, you'll get different percentages and handle them in different, there's nothing unique about any of the mob types that we won't go over. So first things first, you have another little slime here. And that's a green slime, and then we've got a tentacle. We've already fought both of these, so we're going to kill that green slime really quickly so that we can get the inspired out of here, so we can get people out of the embrace. This is a little bit of a sanguine trap. Now in sanguine weeks, you want to make sure that that slime doesn't die under the tentacle, because obviously you can't move the tentacle, so just keep that in mind for sanguine week. I don't think we do it, but it is very common to pull either. It's very common to, you can split this center pull, so it's pretty common to get these close by guys and pull them at the same time as this, and then do the further away guys separately. But I don't think we're going to, and that's totally fine. The Necro Lord can fleshcraft this little green slime. If he does, the green slime I haven't talked about, it's just a nature proc. So like whenever we deal damage, we have a chance to proc additional nature damage. This is the next like kind of, I would say this is the last particularly possibly rough pull maybe. I guess it depends on how you feel about the next area. But so we've got a few different mob types here. This sniper back here, Venom Fang Sniper, he'll just shoot people at random, and then he'll cast Call Venom Fang, which summons a spider. You can actually already see one's already out here, Venom Fang. So you want to, again, Call Venom Fang is kickable, so you want to be ready to kick that. These Defender of Eyes, Dom Eyes, I don't know. They will occasionally cast a shield. These are similar to the old Atal Dazar skeletons, if any of you guys remember those, that anything under the shield takes less damage. So you want to stop the shield if you can, which you can do via like a stun, paralysis, things like that. So getting rid of those things. Shield's good. The giant is the same big guy that you would have fought at the very beginning if you hadn't had the weird route. He will cast creepy crawlies and put green stuff on the ground. And then just another little green slime that just does damage and dies. As mentioned, though, this giant is going to put out big green swirlies, so it is very common for this area, especially on fortified weeks, to become overwhelmed with stuff to be moving out of. So this can get a little bit messy, but as long as, you know, I did a cap totem. Here comes that shield. There's that bulwark of Maldraxxus. That's what the shield looks like. So we can see the demon hunter stunned that to get rid of that damage reduction. And then I summoned an earth elemental just to help out, keep that a little bit stable on the tank. When you come through the middle, make sure you come through the middle. This puddle here is a tentacle that if you get too close to it, it will get get spawn and you have to fight it. And don't get too far to the left because you can pull this and typically you don't want to. There is a stealthed ambusher right, oh, there he is, we found him. There's a stealth ambusher right here. If you have a demon hunter in your group, they might do this, in which case, the Death Knight broke it anyway. But if you have a demon hunter in the group, because they can use spectral sight to see it and then imprison to CC it, it's pretty common to just skip it or to, skip past it and kill it later to just get better prideful timings. But it's typically always going to be killed. I'll talk about its stuff. So it will ambush someone. So it just like jumps at someone and does a lot of damage to them. It will cast enveloping webbing. I can't stress this enough. Do not interrupt enveloping webbing. Enveloping webbing, it is a cast up and a channel down. The only thing it does is it snares people nearby. And there's no reason to worry about being snared. There's really no problems with being snared in these pulls. But the other thing that this thing could be casting is stealthlings. Stealthing summons lots of little stealthed ads that will then pick someone, jump on them, and quite likely kill them if they all pick the same person. So the reason that you don't interrupt enveloping webbing isn't because that's terrible. It's because if it spends so much time casting enveloping webbing, it's not casting stealthlings. So you want to, and you can be DPSing it that whole time through the webbing because it's not a stun, it's just a snare. So that's why you don't interrupt that. So there's that webbing. Almost always someone will interrupt it. Yep, baddie. I don't remember if I type it. Yeah, I immediately said to say don't interrupt that. It is very common to see someone interrupt that, and you don't want to because you'd much rather, yep, there to save those stuns to stop the stealthings. Otherwise, you have to deal with them, which we do. Okay, so he just cast it. So you can very briefly see, like, the shadows go out, and you can see these little spiders, which immediately begin disappearing. Thankfully, we've got, lots of AoE just immediately ready to hit them. So they're casting ambush. They're going to jump at someone if they get this cast off and do a lot of damage. So AoE stuns are good, pushes, typhoons, and obviously just AoE damage. They don't have a lot of health. But point being is if ambush goes off, people are going to die. So, keep the stealthings from doing that. If I see people not dealing with this, I will often just pick whoever's like a squishy ranged and just like put an external on them so that hopefully they don't die. But I had a cap totem that time, so we good. This pack is going to be a little bit obnoxious because it's an inspired mob. We can get like super into, oh, we should CC this guy and then pull everything away, but I'm not going to get too much into, affix specific. Here's how to deal with this particular inspired. Point being, the mobs are all types we've already seen. We've got this ambusher who should be your first kill target. In a normal week at least, because it'll do that stealthing. So same deal, you don't interrupt enveloping webbing, and not that we can right now anyways, and you do interrupt call venom fang. There we go, got that one. And then you try to stop the stealthings from going off by chain stunning it. We weren't able to stop it, so I'm going to just randomly, I'm still all experimenting with what can and can't break them out of stealth, so sometimes I'll just drop random totems and stuff on them to see what happens. So that's what that Earthbind was all about. Okay, and same deal. I mean, the mob types don't really vary too much in most dungeons, I'm realizing, as I've been doing these videos. And we're going to get a prideful here. Depending on what percentage, you had, obviously you may or may not get prideful. So he brought the inspired mobs into the ambush, but you can see they're not impacted by the inspired, which I thought was interesting. So that's cool. Cool facts there. Anyways, what I was saying is, depending on your percentages, you might end up with the pride fairly early on this pack, which, particularly if you haven't killed the stealthing mob, can be really problematic. Or if, like, the shield guy goes up and keeps that going on a really long time, it can also be problematic. So you want to try and kill that evenly if you're going to get the pride early. This particular boss is pretty simple. You need to all be stacked on top of one another, and then someone's going to get picked. And after maybe 6 or 7 seconds, they will get jumped on. And that will cause a lot of damage to anyone around them, and anyone who gets hit by it also gets stunned. So here we go. So we're all getting up here. If you end up too far away from one another, you get like isolation as a debuff or something, and your screen turns dark. You'll see it happen to me, I'm sure, as we're moving around. So if you spend too much time away from other people, you get webbed and someone has to come break you out. So that is very bad. So you need to stay near other people for the most part. And that's made difficult by this shadow ambush. So the Death Knight was picked. You can see he has this debuff here. What he needs to do is he needs to make sure no one else is in that circle, because anyone in that circle in 4 seconds is going to take damage and get stunned. So what you do is you kind of hang out until you have to get out, and then you get out, get stunned, and come back in. You can see I kind of start moving in the other direction. I like to try to help out to make sure that they that I don't get stunned by moving in the opposite direction of them. And also I tend to, depending on, the healer and how much health the person has, they might need an external if they're already low, and because they are going to take a pretty big, okay, I guess he didn't take a big chunk of damage, but generally speaking, they do take a pretty big chunk of damage. So help them out. And then the next thing is, unfortunately, the thing that makes us all run around. So every once in a while, we'll summon Brood Assassins. So you'll see them based on these gray circles on the ground. That tells you where they are. They're stealthed, and you need to break them out by damaging them. So you can see one guy's off running around getting them all out, which is super convenient. If you're really mobile, that's a really good way to help out. If you've got like ground targeted AoE as like a mage, like with a flame strike or something, that's a really big deal as well. So you just want to break them all out. You want to break them all out as quickly as possible, especially on Tyrannical Week, because while they're stealthed, they're constantly just throwing knives at people. You can see they threw a knife at the priest. He's got a almost 30-second debuff there, and it does nature damage, and it stacks. And each one of those throws knives. So it stacks up on the whole party really fast and does a lot of damage. So you need to break them out as quickly as possible and get them killed. Once they're broken out, they're going to start attacking the tank. So that's its own section of pretty serious damage. So I like to use like AoE stuns and stuff once they're grouped up. Also, I didn't mention it, but the Cytotoxic Slash, which is cast by the boss every once in a while, it's cast on the tank. It is I believe it's a poison. No, it's a disease. No, it's a poison because my druid can cleanse it. So it's a poison. So, but either way, I can't cleanse it on the shaman, so I just have to deal with it. It just causes them to take extra nature damage, which is not good. And I think it's also just a general dot as well. I'm not sure. But point being, on Tyrannical, it's actually kind of a problem. So if you're like a paladin tank or someone who can cleanse yourself. If you're a healer that can cleanse them. It only comes up every once in a while. It's only going to be on the tank. You don't have anything else to cleanse, so just cleanse them. Here come those Brood Assassins again. You can see I'm kind of far away, and I'm still not getting like debuffed for being far away. Oh, and so here's that dark screen that I mentioned. If you're too far away from someone, you get this debuff and you get the dark screen telling you, hey, get near someone. But you only need to get near them briefly and only for 10 seconds. You only need to get near them very briefly. You can just run past them. And once you get that debuff that you need to get near someone, you have 10 seconds to get near someone. So it's not a big deal as long as you pay attention to it. And I particularly mention this for Quaking Weeks. A lot of times people freak out on this boss for Quaking Week, but it's okay. Like literally just run next to someone and then run away. Like you don't have to stay next to each other if you're worried about quaking or whatever. Just make sure that you don't stay together is really the problem. You need a little bit more percent. Very common here. Different people will pull different percentages. Also, different people may or may not plan to kill slimes downstairs. You can see me talking about that in Discord, or not in Discord, in party chat there. So that's why I'm like, don't trust my thing for slimes, because there's slimes downstairs that aren't on everyone's route, but should be because they're big Necrolord value. We're gonna go kill them now. So off to this right hallway, there's one of each type of slime, which you can imagine getting all 3 slime buffs at the same time. So you got the huge haste buff, the nature proc, and reduced damage taken. So that's big value. However, this is a very dangerous hallway. We've got corrosive gunks going, which remember are like diseases that are going to hit anyone nearby. We've got a purple slime here, so shortly here we're going to have them, all of these, so shortly here we're going to have withering filth in this tiny little hallway. that's going on the tank, which is even worse. So that's going to be a big amount of damage and a haste debuff if it, on anyone who's caught in that circle. And viral globs is going off, which is just doing AoE damage from the blue slime. So look at, because it was on the tank and no one else got out, and he obviously couldn't, really get out. Everyone took that damage who was in that circle, and they've all got that haste buff. And they're getting and since they're all in melee, they're getting the viral globs disease. Not the viral globs disease, the corrosive gunk disease, sorry. So you can see how dangerous this hallway is if you're not paying attention. It's fine as long as you're paying attention. Literally all of these things are just spread out. That's all it is. It's just spread out, but people don't because that's a tiny hallway. But it's huge value once you do it because you get big fleshcraft boost. All right, so devoted time. So I think that these two are literally just to introduce people to the fact that the aggro is weird. So the normal tiny little devoted are just a non-issue, just kill them. The big Plagueground devoted, they do a lot more damage and they can't be snared or slowed. So tanks, you need to take those seriously, especially on like Necrotic Week. If they're in the pull, you won't be able to drop stacks because they cannot be slowed, they cannot be ringed, they cannot be pushed. So, and they do a lot of damage. This is just more of these devoteds that I've just talked about, and then one mini boss called like Ichor Bileflesh or something like that. He will eventually teleport, and he will teleport to each one of these sections, presuming that a mob is there, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if you like fight this pack, he will then teleport, and you'll fight this pack, and then he'll teleport, and you'll fight this pack. What's far more common is since the devoteds, other than the big one, are slow and easy to kill, that people will just pull them all and just DPS them all as quickly as possible. Keep in mind they do burst and do other on-death affixes, so that's something to keep in mind. That said, it is very common for groups to actually skip to the back without pulling Bileflesh and kill the stuff up front up in the back first, and then come up here and kill him. That way he doesn't like jump around to each one and you just get to kill them all at once. If you do that, note that you need to jump as you move through this water. Like just constantly jam your spacebar the whole time you move through the water, because if you touch the water, it does a huge amount of damage and it's a stacking dot. So you need to make sure that you don't take... I was about to teleport because I didn't want to risk taking the damage, but then I realized, oh wait, we're killing this. Like I said, kind of uncommon. The other thing that Ichor does is he oozing carcasses, so he basically turns one of these little plague bounds, he heals it and turns it into I don't think he heals it, but he does turn it into a much bigger, angrier devoted. So the ghost step, that's him trying to teleport, but he teleports to like, oh, I don't know why I did that. Anyways, he teleports to the other devoteds. So once the devoteds are all dead, he'll still do the teleport, which is unfortunate. You just have to stand there, but he'll just reappear at the same spot. The reason I've come back here is because we're about to have Prideful. So we want to make sure that you're not too close to you want to make sure you're not too close to Bileflesh because, or not too close. Yeah, you want to make sure Bileflesh is not too close to the boss area because you have to fight this Prideful and you don't want to accidentally pull her at the same time. And then we just fight the Prideful as typical. This boss essentially is going to have 3 phases. So the first phase you're going to have Prideful for. Well, let me explain why I'm talking about the phases. The main painful thing that this boss does is something called Infectious Rain. Infectious Rain is a disease rain that will rain down upon your group. It stacks up to 4 times, does a lot of damage. And so healers in particular, this is the heal mechanic that can be pretty difficult. And she'll do that, on a timer. So the first phase, because you have Prideful, it goes so fast usually that you're only ever going to get 1 and possibly none on Fortified Weeks. And so not only does she die fast, but also you have Prideful, so you can just blow all your heal spells and stuff. Not your cooldowns, just your normal heal spells. And you'll be fine because you've got the Prideful buff. It doesn't cost you any mana, things like that. Phase 2, phase 2 is usually when I would recommend popping Heroism or Lust in order to kind of make up for the fact you won't have the Prideful buff. So that way you can once again push her down. You have Hero to help you heal through the Infectious Rain, things of that nature. And phase 3 is when I recommend your healing cooldowns. I mean, if you're the type of class who has a cooldown for each one, even better. But you basically, the point being, you have to plan out when are you going to have big buffs versus when do you need to use cooldowns. Additionally, DPS should be doing the same thing. If you blow all of your cooldowns in phase 1 because you want to do big damn, you might end up having to be in phase 2 for a very long time as a result, and that could wipe you. When if instead, Joe had popped his cooldown in phase 1 and Sally popped her cooldown in phase 3, in phase 2, I'm good at numbers, and then Roger popped his on phase 3, no particular phase is is super long, and it might be a little bit more secure. We'll see this in the actual fight here, though. Since we've got our slime buffs and our pride buff and hero and stuff, this is going to go pretty quick. So let's start the actual fight. So the first thing she's going to do is she's going to summon a mob out of this center pool. And it could be anywhere around the circle. There it is. So you want to move, no matter who you are, you want to move towards the pie slice that the spawn is in, but you don't want to be directly in front of it, because you can see he's casting Touch of Slime, which summons this circle. Only the tank should be in this circle. Melee should be kind of off a little bit to the side, but not much. And range can be behind the circle, but only the tank should be in the circle. But the reason everyone moves, even though only the tank needs to be in the circle, is because during this phase, the tentacles are guaranteed to smack the platform in the area isn't this pie slice. So this is basically indicating where the safe area is about to be. That's the other big mechanic here that typically kills people, is tentacle slams. So we'll talk about getting the safe. See, we didn't even get one tentacle slam. That went so fast. And we did get one tick of Infectious Rain. But so now we go into the phase transition, which is tentacles only, and little trash mobs. These trash mobs, by the way, explosive trap. Ranged on this fight on Explosive Week. Make sure you're watching for these. And also, just generally speaking, on Tyrannical Week, everyone, these things do not have normal threat tables. If you are a healer or a ranged or a melee and you run close to this, it very likely will smack you in the face. So don't get too close to them. If you do, stun them while you're there. Which, not getting too close to them can get a little bit complicated as we move around these tentacles. There's a few different configurations for the tentacles, but basically so that's an alternating configuration. And then are we going to get, okay, so a different alternating configuration. So you just get quickly into the center. They are wider than they look, so give them a lot of breadth. And then after a few smacks, she comes back up. This one's the one that I'm going to pop hero for. I've seen some people who like to do hero in phase 3. I recommend phase 2 because in phase 3, you have to fight her while dodging tentacles, while in phase 2, people can just stand in DPS. So I think you get more value out of the hero at this during phase 2. So that's why I do that. This is just going to be, again, she summons a little mob, so we go into that place because we know that's going to be the safe pie slice. The tank needs to get in that circle. Everyone else gets out of it. She is casting Infectious Rain now. So she after the cast goes, you'll see it ticking down and you'll see our diseases ticking up. So that's something that I as a healer need to be prepared for. I had my Cloudburst totem ready, so that's been storing up some of my healing. I've got some healing rains and stuff going out. Basically just prepare for AoE healing when she comes up because Infectious Rain's about to come. As you saw, it is a disease. This is a really good value for revival from monks. Healers who can cleanse disease can cleanse one person, usually probably the person who's most likely to die. If you're like a DPS paladin or monk or someone or a tank or a tank paladin or monk or anyone who has a disease cleanse, on Tyrannical, it's very helpful to cleanse people's diseases because that's just a huge removal of a huge amount of damage. Don't cleanse until you get the 4th stack or she goes down, though, because otherwise you'll just get another stack. It goes up to 4 stacks or until you push her through, whichever comes first. Once you see that 4th stack, though, you are free to cleanse. Also, Kyrian Vial will remove the disease as well, but once again, wait for the 4th stack. So this one, rather than the crisscross alternating pattern, we're going to have 3, so that's going to hit, and then all of the rest of the platform will come hit. So I need to go stand near it, and then move into it. And then here she comes again. This, as you'll see now, we're going to have to start dodging tentacles while also fighting her. So, and healing through infectious rain. So this is where it gets a little bit difficult. You should also, you know, so here comes the tentacles at the same time. That's why this starts getting real dicey. Anyone in the group, healers, tanks, DPS, should also plan like cooldowns and stuff. Obviously, don't turtle, don't disperse, don't do things that are going to keep you from dealing damage, because we need to get through this phase as quickly as possible. But if you have like anti-magic shield, if you have fortifying brew, if you have divine protection, anything like that, just to lower the amount of damage you take when you have infectious rain stacks, is really helpful for the healer. And that's it. Ta-da! We have done it. I don't remember if I get anything. I don't think so. Oh no, I give away my ring. Hooray! Oh, I got a pet. So I hope you guys enjoyed Plaguefall. And we will be back next time with who knows what. We'll see. I've got every dungeon recorded right now except for Theater of Pain. So I have my pick of things that I want to voice over. If you guys have any specific questions or want something in particular discussed, let me know. Thanks so much, all.